The second type of chemical reaction that my class needs to know is called decomposition. Decomposition chemical reaction is one where something breaks down. And I don't mean like your car breaks down on the side of the road. It's not that something quits working. It's that something gets broken down like a leaf that is decomposing in the yard. It's becoming broken down into smaller pieces. The chemicals are being torn up and distributed out into the yard through fungus and beetles and bacteria and whatnot. So we're talking about breaking down a chemical compound into simpler parts. The standard or a basic way you could represent this is AB would represent some sort of compound, and then it will lead to an arrow, which will represent the chemical reaction occurring, and then the result, the products, are A and B. So the complicated thing, AB, which is two things put together, has become less complicated because they're now separate from each other. The two pieces that were put together are now separated and they're standing alone. They are simpler each by themselves now than they were before. A specific example might be the decomposition of water. Water, I don't know if you've ever seen this done. It's not uncommon to see this done, but water, if you electrocute it, it will break down into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. So the complicated molecule of water, or the relatively complicated molecule of water, is broken down into the simpler parts of just hydrogen and just oxygen, and look how it follows a pattern. One thing, which is multiple elements combined, is broken down into the individual elements themselves, and the twos here are only there to balance the chemical equation. Another example would be CuCO3, which in this case is going to be copper 2 carbonate. It is one fairly complicated molecule, and it will break down, it will decompose into copper 2 oxide and oxygen. So this one, the oxygen doesn't come fully away from the copper, but you do have a breakdown of something that was more complicated into two separate pieces. And so this represents decomposition also. It follows a pattern. One thing is broken down into two separate parts. That's an example, or it's two examples of decomposition. And one other thing you'll notice is, especially if you watched my example for synthesis, synthesis and decomposition are the reverse of each other. In my synthesis example, we had hydrogen and oxygen forming water, the arrow going the other direction. In this one, we have water forming hydrogen and oxygen. The synthesis reaction and the decomposition reaction are the reverse of one another.